Hello everyone, this is Pico Entertainment and we are back again. I'm just going to talk now about tennis now and just continuing on with the collation of events and updates that's constantly going on because of this whole coronavirus outbreak. So I've done previous videos when it started off quite a small announcement back that when Indian Wells was cancelled, and then I did a further update when we knew that the kind of next 6 tournaments were being cancelled, the likes of the Miami Open and the Monte Carlo Masters and the Barcelona Open. I think that was kind of for the kind of up to 12 weeks that had been cancelled on there. And in that video we talked about what would eventually happen to the French Open and possibly Wimbledon. We kind of determined that the US Open was safe for now, but it was really kind of those tournaments that happened in the June and July that the kind of primary question, if you like. So there's been a further update now, and the ATP have decided now that there'll be no tennis activity up until June the 7th now. So basically that wipes out all of the clay court season, and most importantly the French Open, which I'll get to in a minute because obviously it's a major announcement there. So just a quick statement on the ATP and WTA on this. They've basically said, after careful consideration and due to the continuing outbreak of COVID-19, all ATP and WTA tournaments in the spring clay court swing will not be held as scheduled. This includes the combined ATP and WTA tournaments in Madrid and Rome, along with the WTA events in Strasbourg and Rabat, and ATP events in Munich, Estoril, Geneva and Lyon. The professional tennis season is now suspended through 7th of June 2020, including the ATP Challenger Tour and ITF World Tennis Tour. At this time, tournaments taking place from 8th of June 2020 onwards are still planning to go ahead as per the published schedule. Okay, so that's the events going on here. So again, no real complaints. I don't think anyone can complain. Same as before. Public's health and safety are the top priority right now for all sports, including tennis. So they generally don't feel comfortable enough to resume originally just after April. Makes complete sense right now. I don't think it is feasible to start then. So they're going to push it back to June. And again, depending on how this virus goes, as opposed to all the other videos I've done, we may see a further pushing back. Okay, so which we'll talk to in a minute. But yeah, that is the current statement from the ATP tour on here. So now the big issue here, right, is that it's been announced that the French Open, which takes place, I believe, kind of, is it May and June, isn't it? End of May, beginning of June time takes place on it. It's now going to be moved. Okay, it's going to be moved to September the 20th, and take place over the 2 weeks ending October the 4th. Now, it's been highlighted by many. The first talking point here is that it's only 6 days after the US Open, right? Which is extremely close, because I mentioned previously that the kind of closest proximity between the slams is normally between the French Open and Wimbledon, right? So you have the Australian Open in January, and then you have a good 4-5 month gap, which you have the Indian Wells and Miami, then you have all the clay courts tournaments, and then you have the French Open, and I'm sure it's 2 to 3 weeks in between, and then you have Wimbledon, like the grass court season, and then it's another 5-6 weeks before we start going towards the US Open, right? So you always have a gap, primarily because we know the Grand Slams, you played a lot of matches within a 2-week period, all the focus, all the scrutiny, it takes a lot of players. You can't have back-to-back Grand Slams 1 week after the other, right? It's just too much for the players. And also, for each surface, you always want a group of lead-up tournaments, including the Masters, etc., so players can use those tournaments to build their way into form, right? And as we know, clay is very distinctive from the other surfaces, right? So We generally deem that grass is the fastest surface, but even on hard courts, even though we have all this debate about homogenization and the adjustable surfaces, hard courts still, play very fast. Obviously not as fast as you compare to the 90s era of tennis, but still faster than obviously a clay court. So going to clay court is for a lot of people a big adjustment, and they're going to need those 2, 3, 4 tournaments to adjust to the change of pace, the change of style that comes along with playing on clay, right? So you're telling me, if I'm getting this right, that 6 days after the US Open, where they would have played a series of hardcourt tournaments and then 2 weeks of the US Open, to then 6 days later go on to the clay and play a 2-week Grand Slam tournament on clay court. I don't really see how that makes any sense. I understand they want to maintain the Grand Slams, they want to maintain the French Open. I get all that. I completely understand. They're big tournaments, big events throughout the year. They want to, again, much like with football, they want to try and maintain the kind of structure, if you like, but the kind of order, if you like, of the tour itself, okay? So again, we go back to talking about the sport as an entity, right? A unified entity, which you would have the 4 Grand Slams taking place. So I understand they want to do this, but 6 days after the US Open, how does that make sense? I don't really understand that. And okay, maybe I'm coming from a casual, half casual tennis fan point of view. So anybody who's more experienced, within the sport, has more knowledge in the sport, maybe they can tell me, that this is workable, this is feasible, perhaps. But unless you're not Rafael Nadal or maybe to a lesser extent Novak Djokovic, it's going to be very difficult for you to make that quick fire adjustment from the US Open to the French Open, right? 6 days, I could understand maybe 2 or 3 weeks, 3.5 weeks maybe, to give players to get time to get adjusted to the change in services. But 6 days, I don't know. I think this might be a provisional postponement, and they're just pushing it back there to see what happens with the virus. They don't want to come out and say, "Oh, no French Open," right? Because once you do that, it sets a precedent. Because as I mentioned before, Wimbledon is literally just right around the corner after the French Open. So what's going to happen to Wimbledon, right? As we're seeing increases in people getting detected in the UK, and unfortunately, deaths have now come to over 100 in the UK. And we're in the middle of March. So how bad are those numbers going to be by the time you get to June, July, when Wimbledon is expected to take place? It's just going to be almost just unfathomable that you could put Wimbledon in action. So maybe this is a case of saying, right, well, Wimbledon is maybe going to get pushed back to August, maybe late August, and then you have the grass court, because the grass court doesn't take very long anyway. Let's be honest, the grass court season, right? But you still have warm-up tournaments, don't you, right? You still have like Eastbourne, you still have Hamburg, tournaments like that in place. So, it's just, I can't see it. I think they're just rejigging the tour. So Wimbledon will take place in August. French Open takes place in September. So it'll be Wimbledon, US Open, and then September when we have the French Open. Okay, and then I don't know then what they're going to do then about the Asian hardcourt swing, and then the World Tour Finals, which I've read somewhere that's due to take place in Wuhan in China, where basically the whole virus, correct me if I'm wrong, that's when it kind of originated from. I don't think that's going to happen, surely not. Even though they've reported that, yes, they've kind of got a bit more of a grip of it in China, but still, I don't know if it's safe enough, to kind of hold a tournament over there. And, I'm still maintaining that they should cancel the Olympics. I know they're maintaining, just to go off on a quick tangent, they're maintaining they're going to go through the Olympics. I think they should cancel the Olympics, my personal view, but there you go. But, yeah, it's just a really strange decision. And I know there was the other controversy as well is that a lot of players have commented that they weren't told. It's kind of made of the tournament director themselves and the players weren't told, because you have to remember tennis is played all year round and players have to fit and schedule tournaments, which tournaments they're going to play all year round, right? Because they have to do all the travelling and the preparation. They don't just turn up for these big Grand Slam tournaments. If they're going to play tournaments, they have to work out how many Masters they're going to play, how many 500s they're going to play, particularly for people who have to play challengers, to try just get into the tournament. So there is an extreme amount of planning and preparation that goes on within tennis. So if this is the case, that the news was just sprung on them, oh, by the way, we're going to move the French Open to a later date, I don't blame the players for being a bit annoyed. And, I can understand one thing postponing, because I think the players would have already prepared themselves for that. They keep track of the events just like everybody else, so they would have anticipated the tour getting pushed back. That's one thing, but to then say, right, we're going to have a Grand Slam later on in the year, because that's the time when they would have been prepared. They think, right, that's the time I'm going to prepare for the hard courts and the US Open and then the Asian tournaments after that, right? But then you're saying, oh no, we have to play the French Open in between that. So will we see players actually just putting out? Will they just not play the French Open? Federer's done it in the past. Like, yes, I know it's Federer, but will they just say, well, you know what? No, especially if the tour's going to kind of get condensed, with Wimbledon maybe taking place in August, right? And then you have the US Open and then you have the French Open. Our players going to say, well, you know what? That's too much. I might just play Wimbledon and US Open and forget about the French Open and then concentrate on the Asian hard courts afterwards and the World Tour finals later. They may just do that. We don't know. So again, it's a lot of speculation. I was just really surprised by that when I read that. So yeah, we're going to see the fallout of that and see what players speak out more. It could be cynical and say it's good for Nadal. At least it's good for Nadal that he's still got a French Open, because obviously it gives him another chance to, level Roger Federer at 20, right? Even though, to be fair, he can still do it at Wimbledon, and of course he has won US Open 4 times. He is defending champion, so I'm not ruling out Nadal other tournament. I'm just saying, obviously, the French Open is, the French Open for Nadal. So that was the one we were all anticipating that he was going to hit number 20 and level Roger. So yeah, interesting there. The only other news that I'm reading here is that, again, going by the ATP statement, they're saying in parallel, the FedEx ATP rankings and WTA rankings will be frozen during this period without any notice. So again, yeah, that was no surprise there. They're going to freeze the rankings. They're going to freeze the points. So I think what they're saying here, unless I'm getting that right, is that when they say freeze the rankings, again, someone correct me in the comments, they're not going to add any more weeks, right? So because the tour isn't active, you can't just say, right, well, from now till June, I'm going to gain any extra weeks at number 1, right? Because the tour's not active. So it's unfair to give you those extra weeks at number 1, because you don't know what could happen. If the tour were to continue, you get played, you get injured, you lose points, etc., right? So that's what I'm guessing what they mean. I don't think they're going to be able to total weeks at number 1, right? Same way, which is I don't think they're going to take off any points for not participating in any tournaments. The tour now is just stuck still. Don't gain, you don't lose, just where it is. That's what I think they're getting at here. Again, anybody who knows more, or if I'm getting this wrong, correct me in the comments below. So that's what I think is going on there. So yeah, it's just in another interesting development on there. We'll see what happens in the future. If I'm guessing, I think Wimbledon's going to get postponed as well. I just think it's too close, and the cases in the UK are just increasing too much to push ahead with going on with Wimbledon. I think they're going to postpone Wimbledon and they're going to try and do it in August. Late August, that fits in, because again, when Wimbledon does finish, you normally have a big massive gap, don't you, until things pick up again in the hard court. So that's what I think is going to happen. I think Wimbledon's going to get pushed back to August, and then they'll just wait and see what happens there. But I could be wrong. But I'm just speculating as well. But yeah, just no surprise about the ATP pushing tournaments back. We're going to see further developments, I'm sure, not just with tennis, but with all sports. You know, it's no surprise. So that's my thoughts really on that. Again, just that French Open taking place 6 days after the US Open. Unless I'm getting that wrong. Again, I've only just what I've read. People correct me in the comments if I'm not getting that right. But that seems the plan right now. And it's all subject to change anyway. Well, this is, of course, will be the first time that the French Open's played with the retractable roof. But I think they still... That's been put on hold as well, because obviously they can't work because of the whole kind of quarantining as well. So whether that roof will be ready in time, if they do have the French Open in place, we'll wait and see on that. But that's my thoughts on that. Let me know what you think below. Do you think this is right? Do you think this is wrong? Do you think, again, is it right that the players aren't being notified? Again, they commented on this, I believe, for Indian Wells as well, but not being told about events. So again, it kind of just bringing up questions about the whole communication within the sport, you know, because you think, especially with this whole virus going around, that it'd be paramount, you know, to keep players up to date on current affairs all the time, right? Why would you withdraw things from them? They're all together as one, right? So again, raises just interesting aspects and questions within the sport on it. What do you think about those? You know, do you think we're going to see Wimbledon pushed back to August in order to accommodate this more? Do you think it's right that the rankings be frozen, you know, as well? So just let me know your thoughts. Again, if I've got anything wrong or I'm misinterpreting what's going on here, just let me know in the comments, and if need be, I'll do a kind of rebuttal video on this. But I'll continue to keep you updated on this as I go. As I said, all these videos I'm doing, I'm going to wait for events to kind of be announced and collate them together and do one video. I'm not going to do an update every time there's something popping up on Twitter, because yeah, I just can't keep up with it on that certain pace. But let me know what you're thinking below. Take care of yourselves, keep healthy, keep strong, and take care for now, and I will see you very soon.